Hello, today I'm going to be working with a young lady named Anne. Anne is 13 and has spent the last approximately 13 years with her birth mother living in a very abusive environment. Her mom was reported to social services when Anne had developed a grapefruit-sized cyst in her uterus, and Anne's mom did not seek medical attention for Anne, and the school became aware of the situation because kids were teasing her that she was pregnant or something like that, which of course she was not, and she was taken by DSS and has now been placed in a foster situation. Anne's mother was diagnosed bipolar and sounds like she was profoundly mentally ill. That is the only diagnosis that I know of, but I believe that there were more. In addition, she used drugs and alcohol and sold drugs, and there were people in Anne's house growing up that were overdosing and trying to touch her, and there are a myriad of different things that went on there, including food insecurity, and I don't know the actual full extent, but I know that there were definitely some traumatic, unstable sorts of situations that she was in her whole life. Also, part of her chart indicates that she missed kindergarten because she failed kindergarten because she missed too many days because nobody took responsibility to make sure that she got to school. So now she is in a foster situation that sounds like a really good environment for her, but she is having problems adjusting to the normalcy and definitely needs some intervention. So I'm just going to spend the next few minutes talking with Anne and explaining to her a little bit about trauma in a way that she can understand. She's definitely a bright young teenager, but I want to explain it to her in terms that she will understand, that are non-threatening, and I will not be using a lot of jargon with her. So here we go. This is our session. We have met a couple of other times just to kind of develop some rapport, and she's a very dynamic and engaging young woman who often talks too loud, which I can only assume is part of her coping mechanism, or the only way that she was able to get attention, or maybe just demonstrates her lack of self-regulation and maybe some poor relationships with others and difficulty maintaining intimate relationships. I know has been something that she struggled with. But anyway, we are going to begin our session now. Hello, Anne. How are you? Oh, good, good. We talked a little bit last week about the experiences that you have had, and I wanted to explain trauma to you a little bit. Would that be okay? Is that something that you're interested in knowing about? Okay, good. I want to explain it to you because I think that not everybody really understands what it feels like to be in a situation where you feel afraid all the time and how that actually affects you and your life. So first I want a simple definition of trauma is when something occurs and makes you feel overwhelmed by the experience or by the thing that the person does, and as a result it makes you feel helpless. Just that feeling of helplessness can be enough to feel traumatized. There are all different kinds of traumas. There are traumas when a person is physically abused, emotionally abused, raped. People who have much less hard experiences can feel trauma, but the main thing is that the person feels overwhelmed and helpless. So what happens to the human brain when they're in a situation where they are scared, overwhelmed, and helpless is an alarm goes off in the brain. And the brain's trying to protect you. And the brain is telling you it's a fight or flight or freeze response. Have you heard about that, the fight or flight? Yeah, exactly. So you know what I'm talking about. So in a situation where you feel threatened, your brain is either going to tell you to fight, run away, flight, or freeze. Yeah, like if there were a bear and you just remain motionless so that the bear doesn't gobble you up. That's exactly right. So once the trauma happens, the brain can get stuck. And actually, before I tell you about that, when people are afraid and they go into that fight or flight mode, your brain releases chemicals that feel like adrenaline, that feel like tense energy rushing through you. Have you ever heard of people who, like women who can like lift up a car because their baby is stuck inside? Yeah. So they have the strength to do that because they are in such a state of flight or fight or flight that their brain just gives them that energy to get through the situation, and they're not thinking about how much the car weighs or how scared they are. They just do what they need to do to get their baby out of the situation. And so when you have a trauma, when you are afraid, when you feel helpless, your brain produces chemicals and puts your body in an alarm state, which gives you the ability to get through it. Now, when you live in a situation like you did, where a lot of different things were happening that didn't feel safe to you, your brain can get stuck. And how do you think that, can you tell me how you feel? We were talking last week about feeling scared, feeling very aware of your surroundings, watching people. Remember you were telling me about that guy on the bus and how you knew the color of his socks and you were watching his feet because you were afraid that he was going to come at you. Well, what you described is what happens to the brain when it gets stuck in that intense mode of fight or flight. So other things that go along with that are feeling startled by loud noises, watchful, noticing what everybody is doing around you. And sometimes, I think that last week you were telling me about your memory and how sometimes it's hard for you to recall things that happened or the order of things that happened. And this is your brain trying to protect you from experience and experiences that are frightening in that moment. And so that is part of, I think, what's going on when you're not able to recall people's names or places or events. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, okay. Please feel free to stop me at any time if things don't make sense or if I'm talking about stuff that's not really part of your experience, because you are the expert on you. Yeah. So another thing that goes along with feeling trauma and feeling that post-traumatic stress from the trauma, which we talked about in our first session, is that you can be triggered by little things. Do you ever hear a sound or smell something and it reminds you? Yeah, exactly. Those things are going to be around, and so they're called triggers, and we need to come up with, I'm going to help you come up with a skill set to develop skills that will help you to keep yourself calm and kind of work with the triggers so that they don't completely undo you and make you feel like you're back in the situation where you didn't feel safe. Does that sound like something that you would be willing to work on? Okay, great. So that was a brief demonstration of me explaining trauma to Anne. Thanks so much for listening.